Good evening, morning.
Hello, hello. How you doing?
Good. I'm in the middle of the outback, so I'm relying on my phone to see how I can go with the internet.
I saw that. I hope it works. Hello, Maury. Hello, Diana. Hello, Derek.
Morning, everybody. How's it going?
Morning, Derek.
Scott, you can ignore the WhatsApps. I had an IT issue. I got it sorted.
Cool. Okay, no problem. I'm trying to just check if anyone sent me anything, but yeah.
No, yeah, you eventually teach yourself when you struggle. So
It's yeah. These tech things, sometimes they work so easily and sometimes they just cause chaos.
yeah, it's actually such a simple thing. Your Zoom room, the link. I mean, it's sitting on tomorrow's date on the calendar, and it wouldn't open. So then I had to just teach myself to copy the link and go and open it in Zoom, and then it works. So actually quite easy.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hello, Vanessa. Hello, Wilco.
Oh, I get the video.
Hi, Gina. Hi, Shane.
Hello.
So we've got a couple of team members that are just going to join us today because I invited them so they could learn from our special guest. Faisal's on his way. He's just finishing off with a client himself. I'm just wondering where everyone else is. Let me just look here and see who we're missing. I'll send them a message quickly. Who are we missing? Maury, we got Dinah's here. Rob, where's Rob? I'm just going to send them all a message and we'll get started because I don't like starting on late.
If anyone gets hungry, I'm improvised. I got my computer sitting on 15 dozen eggs and a leg of ham.
Where are you? You said you're out in the outback. Whereabouts are you?
Oh, yeah, out in the middle of New South Wales. Honestly, it's even for me feels like it's the outback. But anyway, they have phone service where I am. So it's a place called Pilliga, which is in the middle of nowhere, really.
And for those of us that are not from Australia, where is that in the middle of Australia or whereabouts exactly?
So it's about 600 kilometers northwest of Sydney.
Okay.
Southwest of Brisbane. It's centrally located.
Cool. Okay. Listen, I am sorry. I don't know what I've scratched myself, and I'm trying not to bleed to death here. But I reckon we crack on because we're already 4 minutes late. I've sent everyone the link. I'm not quite sure where they are. So what I'd like to do is what we're going to do is we're just going to check in with everyone, and so just a quick check in. Where you at? How you doing? And then the process for today is that if I share my screen here quickly, we basically have an agenda. Oh, where's it gone? What just happened there? So the agenda for today is that we're going to do the check-in with everyone, and then we're going to have the main theme. So the whole idea today is that we will be being taught by Faisal. Then I'll run through if there's any admin for the month. We can run a hot seat if anyone wants, and then we'll close out. So with regards to the check-in specifically this month, is that we're not just going to focus on the month, but we're actually going to look at the year, okay? But I'd like to just wait until Faisal joins us because it's really important for him to hear what your kind of things were. So in preparation, I'll ask you to kind of answer these 3 questions. What are the 3 things you're happy, proud of, you achieved this year, 3 things you wish you had achieved, and what do you want more of next year? So that's kind of the focus. And just to kind of give you a heads up, but just while we wait for him to join, what I'd suggest is, why don't we just have a quick check-in? I'm literally going to do it in the order that I see it. So Maury, just how are you doing, where you're at, and 30 seconds basically. And then we'll go from Maury to Graham, to Diana, to Derek, to Vilko, Shane, Gina, Vanessa, and then Kerry and Kari.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So where am I at? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Scott, what am I supposed to say? How am I doing? Well, I'm here today.
Just where you're at, basically. It's just a check-in. It gets everyone's brains engaged and gets everyone in the room.
All right, yeah. No, well, this month has been a little bit challenging. I was quite ill, and I'm actually just trying to catch up with business and getting sorted out there. So actually, I'm quite tired.
Looking forward to a holiday.
Definitely.
Awesome. Okay, Graham.
Yeah, I'm on a couple of week run teaching low stress stock handling schools. I never plan to really do them in December, but it just kind of happened that way. So I'm on the home straight of that, but it's been a bit of fun. Met a lot of great people, and on the home straight for it's 12 days to Christmas.
Awesome. We'll come back to Graham because for the morning group, Graham is from Australia and has joined us. Derek, you'll be glad to know that you've got another farmer in the crew. But I'll let Derek just kind of give a quick introduction to himself so everyone kind of knows who he is. He has watched the recording with all of you, so he knows who you all are basically. Diana, let's check in before we go there.
Okay, from my side, this month was but up and down. I had a lot of distractions. Basically, yeah, I've done some progress on my property evaluation, but I still need to complete that. Basically, for the year, I've actually, there was a lot of challenges, which I've overcome. It depleted resources, so I have to now find new ways of working through everything for the next year.
Okay. Well, hopefully today is going to be valuable to you, Diana. I really think you're all going to be impressed with Faisal. Derek.
Derek, you muted.
There we go. So we're in the middle of our planting season, extremely busy on a crop farm. It's been a little stressful in the sense that excessive rains have delayed play a little bit. A lot of machine breakdowns. That's pretty much normal stuff that we have to deal with. Long days, 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. And yeah, but right now, what did I tell somebody this morning? I'm content, but a little anxious at the moment, So the crops that are in are looking great. We had more rain again last night, so everything is looking fine. A little frustrated maybe at maybe not quite being where I want to be by December now with regard to my investments and my mastermind activities. But that's to be expected when when you're really busy, you can't do everything all the time. So yeah, and not in a bad place at the moment, just a little anxious to get the crop done before Christmas if possible. Looks like it might not be with a lot of rain. Thanks, Scott.
No problem. Wilco.
Hi guys, so yeah, traveling again, sitting in my hotel room here in the southern part of Australia. I'm down in Hobart today, so quite a busy time for me the last month. Been flying around a lot for work, doing new bids and tenders that we are involved with. So not that much time that I've been able to spend on the activities, or not as much as I would have hoped for. That being said, I did have a couple of breakthroughs, and I did see a few good things in the last month, from a, let's say, from a psychological perspective. So I'm looking very much forward to today and to see what Faisal is going to have to say, because I think it all starts in the mind, and that's why we're in the Mastermind group, right? Is to look at that part first, and then plan out next year, and hopefully start off with a bang in the new year.
Awesome. Yep, brilliant. Shane.
Hi all. Yeah, I'm having an interesting end to a long year. And yeah, just planning for the new year. That's what I'm working on at the moment.
Who's next? Gina. Gina's Shane's sister and has been behind the scenes helping with everything. So all of the stuff that you guys are part of, she's been helping with. And I asked her today as a special invite to come and learn and listen from Faisal as well. Faisal.
Hi everyone. Yeah, it's also been challenging month, but looking forward to today's session and listening in and learning a lot of new things.
Cool. Who's next? Vanessa.
Hi everyone. Been a hectic end to the year for me. Left for New Zealand on the 4th of December, so had to get quite a few tasks done that would normally have been finished around the 15th of December, but had to fast track them. At the moment, I'm sitting in Fox Glacier on the South Island of New Zealand, waiting to go on my glacier trip tomorrow morning. So lovely life this is.
How long is the glacier trip? What is that, a day hike, or what is that exactly?
No. I'm going in a helicopter, Scott. We did the hike earlier this year. I'm not doing any physical stuff again. So helicopter trip, 30 minutes up and back. But the problem is that the weather's coming in, and we couldn't do this afternoon because of the cloud cover. So hopefully tomorrow morning's all clear and we can get that over and done with.
Awesome. Well, enjoy.
I will. Thank you.
Hey guys, we good. We've got a little sideline business where we sell Christmas decorations. So being Christmas, we're all over the place, but having fun doing that. Been a bit of a roller coaster month with all sorts of things hitting us, but it's okay. We're still here. We're all healthy, which is the main thing compared to this time last year. So yeah, all good our side.
Cool. Yeah, from my side, it sounds like lots of other people have had a roller coaster month. I've gone to Disney World this month with roller coasters, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But yeah, it's been a hell of a tough month for me, rounding off a hell of a tough year. So I always joke with people, when my girlfriend broke up with me on the 1st of January, I should have known this year was going to be a special year, and it certainly has panned out to be something very similar to that. Anyway, but yeah, it's I am glad that it's holiday time in like 2 days time or whatever, because I personally need a mental break. I was trying to remind someone, actually, as a lady in the afternoon group, if you've all heard of that, she basically said that, you know, she's going to take a holiday now over Christmas, but she's going to be working on all her tax returns and all that sort of stuff. And I know we've all heard it 1,000 times, but it's the woodcutters. Do you all know the story of the woodcutters, the two guys that are cutting wood? Okay, I can see, Maury, you shaking your head. So just for everyone, I'm gonna tell it quickly. I can see that Faisal's about to join, which is perfect timing as well. So just very quickly, there's two men or women, it doesn't matter, and they go into a forest and they're cutting trees. The one cuts trees just non-stop, like cut, and the other one like cuts for a while and then he goes and sits in the shade, and then he goes back and he cuts for a while and he goes and sits in the shade. And at the end of the day, the one who just cuts is tired and he's perspiring and he has not cut nearly as many trees down as the guy who keeps having a rest. And he basically turns to him and goes, well, what are you doing differently? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm working twice as hard as you and you've cut more trees down. He says, yes, because when I'm sitting in the shade, I'm sharpening my saw. And it's just a metaphor I use for myself that you can't always be busy. We've got to sharpen our saw. So that's where I see that sort of the break coming up, which is critical. But let me just let Faisal into the room. And
Scott, we didn't hear from Graham.
no, we're going there. We're going to go there.
Oh, okay.
I haven't forgotten, Derek. I'm sorry. I'm micromanaging people turning up at different times. Hello, Faisal. How are you doing, sir? You muted. You muted?
Unmute. There you go. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting me join your meeting.
Morning, Faisal. I'm going to do a proper introduction for you. But before we do that, I just want to. There's a gentleman from Australia that hasn't met everyone in this mastermind. We were just doing a quick check-in of where everyone's at and stuff. I've waited for the yearly update so that you can hear that, Faisal. But what I'd like to do, Graham, is just hand to you quickly. And, just briefly in sort of 2 minutes or so, just give everyone an overview so that Derek can understand his fellow akin farmer from across the ocean, etc.
So, I've got that presentation I can quickly do if you want to just make me a co-host so I can do that.
Yep, perfect. Oh, you don't have to be a co-host. You can just share your screen. I don't.
Oh, can I? Yep, righto. Here we go. Let's try this. I'll be quick. Present. Here we go. Yep, that's where I am. Someone asked at the beginning of the call. So there I am in currently right now in west of Brisbane, west of Sydney. What do I do? Well, I spent most of my life farming with my wife. We had a 40,000 acre sheep station, and 20 years ago, I met somebody who changed things for me. My wife has her own business. She does recipes and has her own book, and so she's running her own race. I have a daughter who is married to a Navy guy from England, and she specializes in Facebook ads, and I have a son who's right into farming as well. What I'm currently doing right now is teaching low stress stock handling schools. I'm on a bit of a trip. I've trained about 4,000 or 5,000 people in that program in small groups anywhere in Australia. And I met a fellow called Bud Williams, who was an American guy. And so that's where I learnt that. And I guess it's taking away the predatory way that humans normally handle animals. Having met Bud in 2002, he said, I got this thing called a marketing school for livestock. And so went and learned that. And since that time, I've put about 5,000 through that program. Actually have some South African graduates, Derek, who live Roland Cruz and a couple other guys. So we have some South Africans that came out here to Australia to learn that, which is pretty fun to learn what they do. And on the back of that, we have a mastermind, and so that's been that's a fundamental part of our business. I guess what what happened to us in, I have two business partners in June 2021. At the age of 58, one of them dropped dead. And that put a cat among the pigeons and left two of us to sort of organise things with his family and then make a decision, what are we going to do? Anyway, we're 15 months later, we've run a couple of schools. I also lead Regen Ag tours. I've done 2 to America, and I've got one coming up in New Zealand next year. And I think that's the thing about masterminds I learned is lots of fun and collective minds, and I'm really looking forward to working with all you guys. I'm going to pull up there because I know we've got a lot more important things, but to me, people and relationships, not accomplishments, is really what matters.
Do me a favor quickly, Graham, because you showed us last time. Just show everyone the elk thing, because I think it's really cool.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I did cut off something there, which is probably the most important little thing.
There was 3 slides back, I think.
3 slides back. Okay,
Yeah,
what did I miss? Oh, yes, sorry. Yes. So on that tour, we to America, we decided we wanted to give everybody something, and what we just found this little piece of elk horn on a necklace, and we gave everyone a necklace at the closing ceremony, and it was pretty emotional, that closing ceremony with everyone. And when I came back, I looked up what the elk totem meant, and the elk spirit animal appears in your life to take you on a sacred journey, a trek to embark upon a deeper sense of self, a spiritual journey in which you leave old ideas that no longer serve the greatest purpose in your life. And quite something that we didn't even know that was going to happen. And that's what happened to both those groups that along the way. And the bit I missed was this is what my wife and I love to do. We spent many trips going to the US fly fishing, and I love this quote: "The adrenaline and stress of an adventure are better off than 1,000 peaceful days." And that's that. So we have pretty full lives.
Well, I think the elk quote is a very good way to pivot. So firstly, Graham, thank you and welcome to the morning session. It's lovely to have you here. And I think what I'd like to do now is pivot into the session that we're going to do with Faisal. So just to introduce Faisal, and I'm sure Faisal, you can do a far better job than me. But we met, we were actually dads in the same school. I was told by one of our mutual friends about what he did, and I was fascinated to hear more about it. And in simple terms, my understanding of it is that Faisal studied to be a psychiatrist in England, went all the way, qualified, then got fairly disillusioned with medicine. And Faisal, please, you need to qualify anything I say that I get wrong here, but got fairly disillusioned with medicine, and then went to Oxford to do an MBA, and was dealing with some of the top people from around the world. From an MBA perspective, whether it's old family money or successful businessmen, etc. And actually they started asking questions around the whole coaching environment. And what he realized was that he had the balance between the science and kind of understanding of medicine, nutrition, and all the psychology from a psychiatry perspective. And then obviously you've got the success and the business and results and everything else. And, so he started working with a group of those people, and I don't exactly know, maybe he can tell us, but it's evolved on into helping with Formula One and, getting, Formula One drivers to be far higher performers, et cetera. But when we very kindly, or he gave me some of his time very kindly last week, and we had lunch, and I sat there and I thought to myself, so many of us, me included, do our goals every year. We do our New Year's resolutions, whatever you want to call them. And we kind of get to the end of the year. It's about this time of the year where most of us very often are quite disillusioned. Like, we set all these things and then we're like, oh, we only got like 10% of the way. And we kind of go on Christmas holiday and we go, but don't worry, next year will be different. And we set all our goals in January, like this year is going to be the greatest year, like whatever. And then we get to the end of the next year and it's like, didn't make nearly as much progress. And so I said to Faisal, is there any way that you would come and share with our mastermind around the science of success, so that if nothing else, we can have a shift where next year we can go on holiday now with a confidence, knowing that we're going to do things differently next year to get better results. And I know we've all heard that cliche 1,000 times by Einstein, but the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So Faisal, before I go any further, anything I've missed or anything else that you think is relevant in terms of just an overview and an introduction, and just to remind you, because I did say to everyone else, what we're going to do is we're going to give everyone kind of 3 to 5 minutes to kind of run through their year, just so that you've got an understanding and I've got an understanding of where they're kind of at. And then we're going to go into a kind of a session where you're going to kind of take us through the logic of it. But anything that I've missed that you think is relevant in terms of the setup and the introduction? You muted again. You muted.
Oh, thank you very much, Scott. No, that's quite fair. I should just say that you've been very flattering in your introduction. I always, when you hear about yourself, you think, yeah, I did actually do those things, but I don't feel like it. I just feel like I'm a jobbing tin pot doctor who tries to help people, but that's fair. And I'm very happy to be here in amongst what sounds like a really, I'm preaching to the converted and the people who are already on this path. So I'm very glad to hear your stories, and if I can be of any assistance, then I'm here to share whatever might be of use to you. So please carry on.
Awesome. And just before we get started, and I'm not much of a Formula One driver, but it is unique. What did you do exactly with the Formula One that achieved such results in terms of the drivers, etc.?
Well, that was it was sort of around the beginning of when I started it. It was, as I say, I was at Oxford. I went back to Oxford to do business. Partly because I just slightly disillusioned not so much disillusion, but I sort of felt medicine as a neurologist.
Mate, I think we're going to have to switch off your camera.
Uh-oh.
Can we try to switch off your camera?
Okay.
It's not coming through clearly.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Let's try again. I don't know about everyone else, but I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this. Because there's a load shedding in South Africa, as you're probably aware, the transmitters for my LTE broadband tend to slow down, and we're into our 3rd hour of power cut here. So I'm running off an inverter. So I apologize in advance. It might drop out. I'll try and join back as soon as possible. But you asked about how I dealt with Formula One. I think it came about relatively early into my sort of coaching journey, about 5 or 6 years ago. And the question it was really a curiosity on the part of a Formula One owner. He was part of a fund which ran a Formula One team, and they were interested in how they could, if you like, increase the performance of the team. And as a psychiatrist, you kind of, or a coach or whatever you want to call me, I call myself a performance coach, if that makes any difference. I was interested in really, how does anyone perform better? How do teams perform better? And what I discovered was that they were investing huge amounts of money and time into the engineering. So at that time, that team, for example, on any Formula One car at any point, is more now, but it was around 32 computers on board. And I asked the engineers were a pretty solid, sort of dry bunch who believed in figures and facts. And who's this sort of airy-fairy psychiatrist coming along to tell them how to get better? But I asked them, well, what were their tolerances in terms of performance, if they were getting feedback from any sensor or any ECU on board the car? And they said, well, it's got to be within 95% or whatever. So anything less than that, it wasn't acceptable. And then I went and spoke to drivers in the paddock, trackside, And I asked them very simply, how often do you feel you're driving at your best? And none of them gave me a figure that was higher than around 40%, 45%. So I returned to the team and I said, well, look, you've managed all the computers very well, except for the one that arguably matters most, the one that is in the driver's head. And this driver, all of them are telling me that their performance is at best 40% short, 40% only at its best, 40% of the time. So what can we do? And that allowed me to sort of get into the team, and we looked at how to improve drivers' performance. And with my toolkit coming from medicine, there were so many things which were amiss in driver performance. So I adapted a lot of stuff which I'd done working with Air Force pilots and with surgeons, things like live EEG, things like time shift, stretching race times, reducing race times, assessing decisions pre-consciously. And I could see that there was a great room for improvement. So they weren't willing to let me play with their main driver because their main driver was too valuable and his time was taken up entirely. I mean, if you're an F1 driver, you don't even have a minute freely. But I thought, okay, well, let me talk to your development driver and I'll improve his lap time at Silverstone by 4 seconds. Now, remember F1, to improve at that time, to improve the lap time of an engine by 1 second was around $6 million of investment in an engine. So by 4 seconds was a ridiculous, almost preposterous claim. And it was difficult for them to believe, and they think that I was trying to almost hoodwink them. And I said, well, look, I've done this with surgeons, with pilots. How about this? If I don't get there, don't pay me. And they thought, okay, well, that's fair enough. And we succeeded. And 4 seconds was easily achieved. It would be too technical to explain to you exactly how it happened. And I'm happy to share that in due course. In fact, I'm writing a book about it among the 2 books I'm working on at the moment. But anyway, I'd written 1 book by then. I'm 6 books later now. I'm arriving at a stage where I think, having worked in F1, in finance, in entrepreneurship, with a couple of sporting guys. I've got one guy who plays international cricket, who's doing very well now after 18 months of hard slog on the personal development of performance coaching. So I thought it'd be good to synthesize that. And so here I am. Happy to take any questions for it, but this might be too waffly, but I hope that gives you an idea of the kind of thing I do. I sort of create a toolkit that's bespoke to a person in their chosen field, so to speak.
Well, thank you, Faisal. And I think it's a good way to pivot now. So what I'd like to do, and the way we've set up today on purpose, is to review the year. Again, to remind you of these 3 questions. And there's really 2 reasons for it. The first reason is so that you think it through for your year, what's worked, what hasn't worked, etc. And the second is so that Faisal and I can actually hear kind of, where you're at, what the patterns are, etc. And the metaphor I'd like to use is the Formula 1 driver, because once we've been through everyone, and I'm going to sort of try and keep, that we don't sort of run more than sort of 3 to 5 minutes per person, so that we finish, and we've got plenty of time to give Faisal, because obviously the benefit is if we keep it concise, we've got more time with him. Does that make sense? My logic is we keep it concise, but we've got to obviously give him some stuff. And then think of it like the Formula 1 driver. How can we find you your 4 seconds? And that's the objective. Like the objective is like, how do we make 2023 spectacular? And by the way, just to manage expectations, we're not going to have all the answers today. That's not the intention. But hopefully today we can have a mindset shift that we believe it's possible for next year. Is that fair? Yep. Okay. So I don't know how we want to do this in terms of popcorn style. I have prepared myself. So if you want me to go first, just to kind of demo it, I'm quite happy. So it's up to you as to how you want to do it in terms of, but I'd like to just run through each person just so that we get a context of kind of where you're at and what your year looks like. I'm happy to go first. Yes, you want me to go first?
Go for it, Scott.
Okay. Where's my cell phone gone? So I can be my own timekeeper. Right. Cool. So let me just get my notes up. So basically, from my perspective, 3 things that I'm happy or proud of that I achieved this year. The first one is personal health. So I set a goal for myself to be between 95 and 99 kilos and to get healthy. I basically had an identity shift. I've always been one of these people that went up and down in weight like a flipping yo-yo. And this year I've done really well consistently to stay in that band between 95 and 97. And it's quite awesome to finish the year healthy. But more importantly, for me, it's nice to know it's not just a diet that will, relapse or whatever. It's a lifestyle. I've changed that. The second one for me is that this year, I've actually experienced tremendous personal pain, both in business and in my personal life. And I've gone very deep in terms of personal development, deeper than I've ever gone, feeling my feelings, experiencing emotion, dealing with trauma and et cetera. So unfortunately, sometimes there's a great saying I heard recently, if you're brave enough to go into the cave, which is where your fears are, often the jewels lie in the cave. And for 45 years, I've avoided the cave through working too hard or whatever you want to call it, keeping myself busy. And this year, I went in the cave. And then the masterminds, I've really enjoyed this. And with Shane and Gina, and it's one of the reasons I asked you guys to join. The Walter University in general has been a highlight for me of this year, with the masterminds being the crown jewel. I've really enjoyed working with everyone and training and growing and learning myself. So 3 things I wished I'd achieved. I think I've gone backwards in terms of leadership. There's been quite a lot of things that have happened in the business, and it's really, I felt disempowered, lacked autonomy, and I really, as a leader, I think I went backwards. I dealt with a team this year that didn't have alignment, and that's something I really struggle with, because I love to be in a team that is in alignment. And then from a financial perspective this year, I basically have worked the entire year for free. I haven't been paid. I've been paid once in the whole 12 months. And I sort of look at that and I go, why did I do that? I've spoken to other people and they're like, that's crazy. And yes, there's love what you do. There's passion about the business, but there's also just the reality of life. So that's something I need to look at, why I allowed that to go on for as long as it did. And what do I want for next year? I want autonomy. I want to be captain of my ship again. I want to make sure that I'm earning my value. And there's a concept, I don't know if we need to go into it now, but flow. I want to be in flow. And flow is when life is easy and you love what you're doing and you're adding value to the world and you're getting paid and etc. And I'm going to put a lot of energy and effort next year into being in flow. So yeah, that's me. 2 minutes, 57 seconds.
Shall I go, Scott?
Go for it, Derek. You ready?
I am. Okay, so 3 things that I'm happy about this year is we were blessed to take off a great crop. We had a really good rain season. We actually had 2 years worth of rainfall in one. We were fortunate not to have the crops too excessively damaged. So yeah, financially then quite a successful year on the farm. Putting that in perspective though, this coming out of an extended 5 to 7 year drought period where things were not as good and not as easy. So a lot of catch up to do on that, but yeah, all pretty much happy. With the farm being under tremendous stress from the drought and so on, we were forced to put a survival strategy in place. That strategy meant that my cousin and his sons, myself and my son, we put our businesses together, we put all our resources together, and we managed to expand the acreage that we were working in order to survive the drought. That was a strategy we embarked on. I had a lot of hope that it would be the start of growing a much larger family business where the 2 families were involved. Then one of the challenges or disappointments that I've had was that that didn't quite turn out like I envisaged it. And when you put teams together like that or families together like that, you certainly, if they're not all perfectly aligned, and there are three words that count. It's trust, respect, and care. And if any one of those three are absent, then you have a problem managing personalities, and it becomes difficult. That necessitates us splitting our businesses. We're going into the new season in separate ways again. That, however, has brought on its own positives. My son also joined me on the farm a couple of years ago, and he started out, did a bit of on the side for himself, and he's a much better person. He's much happier. It's great to see him happy and being successful. He did really well in the young farmer study group that he joined, and yeah, it went well. As far as my own personal development is concerned, it's been on my mind to get alternative investments going. I did buy property, which we've got tenants in, and is bringing in a bit of money. I'm still waiting for my feedback from Scott on the analysis on that. Looking forward to that, and then I also started this journey with the Mastermind and getting investments. Got my wallet funded, got the first couple of investments. They're very small, but that's how you learn and you start. So great. That's me. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Derek. Just quickly, I did your thing ages ago. I thought I sent it to you, but I'll send it to you again now quickly.
No, never seen it yet. So great.
Okay. Apologies, but it was done.
We'll catch up. No problem. No problem. I've been so busy anyway.
Cool. Who's up?
No one's saying anything. I'll go.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay, let's go. Dinah, let's go.
Can I go, Graham, please?
Ladies first.
Who's that, Dinah?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Dinah, you go first. Yeah.
Okay. For my year, the three things, it's actually my fitness levels. I'm happy with what I've done. I've been keeping up my training regime. So health-wise, I'm in a good condition. Then for one of the properties I sold, it was actually a killer for me. I'm glad I sold it just before the interest rate started going up. The only negative there was I had to pay in, which has made me become more reluctant on what I'm doing with my portfolio, my property portfolio going forward. Then from what I wish I could have done more is I wish I could have created an income stream that is almost running on a low input basis. Yeah, I need to learn how to solve people's problems and automate that altogether. Then the other thing I wish I could have done more is reduce my debt. And yeah, what I would like to see for next year is basically to work my way into implementing the things that I couldn't implement this year.
Are you clear on what those are, Dinah?
Basically, it's like finding a solution that I can literally automate, solving somebody's problem. I don't know what it is yet, and I think that's where my obstacle is, finding the optimum solution for someone and then automate it. Like maybe it's an audio, maybe an e-book on something that I can just put on Amazon or any other platform where people just go and buy, and yeah, something like that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Graham, I think you were next.
Okay. So I'm kind of getting two goes today, but due to the sudden death of my business partner, I had to really sit down and get some clarity. So we finalised ownership of the company to the two remaining directors, me and Jim, which is another family, my wife and I, and him and his wife. We actually sat down in May and had a meeting, and we decided we weren't going to design our lives around the business, because we're both 64. So we gained clarity that what each other's needs are, and they're quite different. And we made a decision to allow me to become the lead trainer, because the person that passed away was the lead trainer. Continue the business whilst we look for some new trainers. And so what I was pretty proud of is we redesigned and I delivered 2 schools with over 100 people in total as the lead trainer for the first time. So we both were very happy with that. In terms of investments, one of the things that Wealth Migrate and the plan have been the 2 things that I really enjoyed learning. I enjoyed learning about the blockchain and crypto and so forth with the plan, and also I've got some started with Wealth Migrate and working through that to get some funds on there. So I guess I really I see my best investment of time at the moment is to get the business rolling and spend time doing that, and not actively on my investments. I think the other thing that I'm really pleased with is assisting my parents to transition to from their own home to a nursing home. And I think, we all often can get confronted with that, doing that. And then my sister's husband passed away in August. And so it was good to be able to just drop everything and go and be there when someone needs you. And I think I was pretty happy with that. Wish we'd be able to have more personal time together with Roz, do more fly fishing. 2023, we'll be going to New Zealand in March, and then Canada and the USA. So so we want to take advantage of the demand for our training programs for 2023. A new second trainer coming on, so and then look for a possible lead trainer to replace me. Grow the mastermind, build on our investments, and look for some options. We're thinking about moving at some point, so look for some options there. But so all in all, I'm really happy to be here in December and got through the last 18 months, and looking forward to 2023.
Awesome, thank you. Who wants to give it a go?
I'll go, Scott.
Let Barry Wilco, thank you. But we're gonna always let girls go first, ladies go first. So we get in trouble for girls.
Sure.
But Barry and then Wilco.
Super, thank you. So 3 things that I'm happy that I achieved this year is: number 1, I bought another investment property. 2, I completed the postgrad UK course. And then 3, I completed some renovations on my home. 3 things I wish I had achieved more of, and that was definitely I would have liked to have been in the ocean more. Just I enjoy being in the sea, as it seems to be a cleansing kind of ritual for me, but I didn't do a lot of that. I wish I would have gone to the theatre and been exposed to that. And then thirdly, it would have been good to have increased business, but it really wasn't a focus at all. Then what I want more of next year, I think definitely I need to put some time aside for surfing and having some good quality time in the sea. I need to revamp my website. That's a definite, has to happen next year. And then thirdly, to increase business revenue in order to increase investments on the Wealth Migrate platform and allow money to work for me on that level. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Maury. Appreciate that. Wilco.
Alrighty, I think from my side, the three things that I'm happy that I achieved. I think firstly, moving across to Australia, not a small move, getting settled in the country and getting the kids sorted out and all of those types of things. That was quite a big step. I think the second point is to say that in my current company, I've grown my influence, and to the point where I've been able to actually join in a lot of different projects, especially on the sort of business development side. But that's a bit of a two-edged sword, but that'll in the next section. And then thirdly, the breakthroughs that I've achieved in terms of self-development. I think I joined the Mastermind group a bit late. I'm actually in the November group, but I think you put me onto the No More Mr. Nice Guy book, for example, there, Scott. So that's been an eye-opener. Yeah, and I've actually done quite a few other courses this year, which is quite good. So I'm very happy with those. In terms of what I wish I had achieved, I think for me, it's the clarity that we spoke about in the last session, especially around becoming a full-time investor and sort of getting out of the rat race of being an employee. That's definitely one thing I wish I'd been or made bigger steps towards. Together with that is to understand my purpose and what can give me meaning in life. You know, what should I be pursuing? Is this with my skill set, where should I fit in? Basically, what can I do a little bit better and not be all over the show and be a little bit more consistent. And then lastly, what I want more of next year, I think for me, it's I really want to be able to take action towards my own needs and put myself a little bit first and work towards just some more headspace and clarity around purpose and meaning. You call it flow, so I think that's the same thing that I'm aiming at.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Who's up? Vanessa, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, just struggling with the unmute there. Okay, three things that I'm happy I achieved this year. I did a wonderful project with the QCTO to develop a new curriculum for 3 of the engineering qualifications that they're hoping to roll out next year. I really enjoyed that work, and I think I found a sort of a happy place where I'm doing work that is meaningful, that I really enjoy. And people I collaborated with, it was amazing to the teamwork that we had. That curriculum is now being presented to the stakeholders, and if all goes through, it will be the new TVET college curriculum rollout from next year. So that's one of my top achievements for this year that I'm happy with. The other one is on the personal development side, creating my destiny, as I call it. And one of those things was climbing Rhino Peak, which was a physical achievement that I didn't think was going to be possible, especially 8 weeks after a compression fracture in my back. But I managed it, although it took me 13.5 hours. And it was an amazing sense of achievement, but more so an understanding that if you have the will, you can do almost anything. And that for me was a breakthrough in my personal development. I had set my goal and I wasn't going to let anything deter me from it. It was what I wanted to do and I was going to get it done. The other thing that I'm happy I achieved this year is this trip to New Zealand. I came out here to visit family who had suffered a tragedy earlier in the year, and I merged it with some of my other goals, and that is to enjoy the splendors of nature, thus the trip onto the glacier tomorrow. So those are my 3 top things for the year. 3 things I wish I had achieved. I wish I had obtained the contract to do the new energy vehicle curriculum development. I'm very passionate about that, and especially since it involves the automotive industry, I really have liked to participate in that. There is still hope. They haven't awarded the contract yet, but they are now 2 months down the line past awarding the contract. The other thing is not getting as many investments on the Wealth Migrate as I would like to, and not getting them to the point where they start to earn me a passive income that covers at least some of my expenses. That was a goal that I wanted to achieve. And the third thing was starting some renovations in the home. At least getting the drawing done would have been a nice completion, but I haven't even started with it. More for next year, I would like to pursue more interesting work, like dashboard development for companies to see their performance and their progress. I've just recently completed a contract for a company, and I must say I love that almost as much as the curriculum development. So I hope I get more work along those lines, and I need to pursue it and find it. And then earning an income from my investment, albeit small to start with, that's the goal. And then I would also like to travel more. So those are my next year activities.
Awesome. Thanks, Vanessa. She says sitting in a glacier in New Zealand. Anyway, who's up? Kerry, Corey?
Cool. Okay, so 3 achievements. Well, for us, towards the end of last year, Carrie was diagnosed with colon cancer, so that chucked us right out with everything that we had planned or hadn't planned. But the good news on that is that she's kicked it in the butt. It's gone. She's on the screenings, which are clear so far, which is excellent. So long may that continue. So that was achievement 1, because that really came out the blue. So we had to deal with that. And then, you know, the family and everything that went around that. So that was a large part of our year, pretty much, this year. Finally, I've taken the decision that I am actually going to help people manage their money, and I'm going to start business with that. People have been coming to me and saying, you know, I've got a real gift with this, but it's a passion of mine, and it's all because I do want to help people get financially free. And it just starts with the real basics. And yes, the mindset for sure. But then once you've got that in place, which is an ongoing thing in daily practice, it's managing your money. So are you budgeting? Are you controlling your money? So it's not how much you've got, it's what you actually do with it that counts. So I'm definitely going to be sorting myself out with that and starting my own business there. On the lifestyle side of things, we joined a club because we couldn't do anything while Carrie was going through chemo. And when you can't do something you really want, then you really want it even more. So that was our thing. When she finished chemo, we were going to hit the sea again, join a club, get involved with like-minded people. And it was interesting because to join this particular club, you had to be referred by existing members, and we knew nobody. But it's amazing how life turned out, because through going down there, we met up with somebody and they actually turned out to be a committee member in the club. So that was great. So we managed to get in that way. 3 things we didn't achieve. Well, because Carrie was diagnosed so late in the year, in December last year, we didn't really sit down and have goals. Our only goal was to just get through whatever we needed to get through. So it's really hard to actually go back now and go, okay, well, we didn't achieve this because we didn't have it in the first place, to be fair. So there's nothing more to say on the didn't achieve side. What we want more of next year is traveling within South Africa. We've already got holidays planned, and we've extended existing trips that we had already planned for this year, but had to put on the back burner until we got through the whole chemo and stuff. So that's all good to go. We kick off in February next year. And then we go to Kruger, which is one of our favorite places. We've extended that out for a whole month in May, June next year. So that's right up there. We will be traveling. And then also to keep this fire in my belly going, where I'm wanting to, as I say, start this business. So no matter what life throws at me to distract me, I'm going to stay focused on it. And to keep it going with personal development, growth, and this desire that I've got to really help others, especially on the financial front. during this time of incredible uncertainty, which is just, I mean, it's global. So that's us.
Awesome. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone else, but you had one goal for 2022 and it sounds like you achieved it, and the metaphor of kicking in the butt is a good one. So well done. Yeah, I'm very glad for both of you. Kerry, where am I? No, sorry. Shane and Gina. I know you guys, so we have a thing in the team between pigs and chickens. At breakfast, a pig is committed and a chicken is just sort of part of the equation. So I don't know if you want to just say anything or join in, or you're quite happy if you want to jump over it, because yeah, it's your choice.
So I actually haven't prepared, but I was thinking of some stuff while everyone was talking. So I don't know if you want me just to chuck it in, or
go for it. Go for it quick. I do want to pivot to Faisal, but I'd like the two of you to be involved if you want to. But I fully acknowledge that you might not be fully prepared, considering I said, "Hey, come as a guest."
Yeah, for sure. So just while everybody was talking, I was thinking of my things. So personal development was one of the big things, in specifically in skills to use in my in business and so on. So a lot of that was actually used in the second thing, which was the Wealth University, setting up the investor roadmaps and all of that, which Gina actually helped a lot in as well, which was great. And then the third thing was having my third child this year. So at the beginning of the year, my wife and I made a list of pros and cons, and the pros list was very short and the cons list was very long. Yet we still went ahead, and it's been probably the toughest year of my life, because there was a lot of complications, but we've made it through the other side, and that's a massive achievement for us. Things that I wish I had achieved, I wish I had worked smarter and not harder. Scott mentioned the woodcutter analogy earlier. I think that was me just working away and not taking the time to figure out how to work smarter. Thing number two was I wish I'd spent more time with my family, which was a result of working harder, point number one. And then number three was having more control and autonomy in my work and etc. And then what I want to achieve more next year is just to have more control over my own destiny. So having that control and autonomy, and what I want to do going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. Gina, I know you love public speaking, so you can avoid if you want to.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm happy for you to move on. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Faisal, can I pivot to you if you don't mind? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me try something if I can. It's much nicer to be seen. I'm going to try and make my video work, and if it doesn't, I apologize in advance. Hold on. Right, hold on. Start video. Is my audio quality diminished, or can you see and hear me okay?
No, I think, to be honest, as much as I agree with seeing you, I would prefer to be able to hear you, and it works perfectly when you're on video, but it doesn't work when the video is on.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. We've just moved to a new place here, and I would rather have a fiber broadband, but we've just used a mobile LTE. Yes, far more handsome. Well, before I had gray hairs and the cynicism and the chain smoking and whatever it is that I have now. But thank you for letting me come along, and thank you for letting me hear your stories. I'm fascinated and very impressed and privileged to be a part, at least, of this sort of group level development. And it's very much in tune with the kind of things I do, albeit I do it on people that you are, very much sits with the kind of people that what I would say broadly in the field of kind of financially independent, looking to retire early if you haven't, but also employed, employing, and trying to make more of yourselves. And it's really it's difficult to describe what would be of use to you without at least getting a poll of some kind of questions which I could then pin down and try to answer more specifically and demonstrate the kind of things which might be helpful to you. To give you a broad overview of what I do, I create, if you like, I'm in the business of creating mental toolkits. And by that, I mean, it's not therapy whereby you sort of come along with issues and you work with someone to resolve or understand those issues. It is, I guess the broad question I ask my clients is, what would help you most discussing the, and most of them would say discussing the future for an hour. I mean, it's a bit of a false question, if you like, because the past is also important in contributing to who you are. Broadly speaking, I look to the future. And when it comes to the future, the wishes that people have are particularly important and revelatory about the kind of things that they consider important and the kind of areas which they've identified as being true to what they really want to do. And you guys have the, if you like, the privilege, the luxury, or even perhaps the burden of knowing that you've cleared the sort of the more basic things of what a person might want to do, be it, you know, have a family, find a partner, field. But most people come to me because they feel they have something which they can't quite access. And that is what I try to assist them to access. And by that, what I mean is everyone has a degree of exceptionality. So I start off with a simple declaration that you do something better than anyone else. And everyone you know does something better than what you can do. And existing in that way is quite helpful in helping you to understand the questions that you might raise. And they place you both, they elevate your own esteem insofar as you get to be in touch with the fact that you may have strengths which you haven't quite recognized or haven't quite developed as much. And in fact, a lot of those strengths may, in fact, especially at your guys' level, be connected to the very things that you think are tying you down. For example, trauma and difficulty. I've heard quite frankly and quite openly, some of you guys describing episodes and events of loss, incident, grief, difficulty interpersonally. And it's remarkable how perhaps well you might present yourself going through them. But I know that on the back of that, there is a huge amount of pain. And we are naturally disinclined towards experiencing pain, and we see it as somewhat dutiful to deal with something and move on. But my experience of the people who I sort of help the most, or people who profit the most from my intervention, is their exceptionality comes from recognizing that the difficulties that they have are frequently and actually quite centrally involved in the things ever, be it the fact that you might be a minority, or be it the fact that you have had a lifetime where you will feel misunderstood, or be it the fact that you have endured trauma at the hands of someone else, or have lost something significant.
Faisal, we lost you. I think we lost you, Faisal. The last word I heard was significant.
Can you give him a phone number to use his phone to call in?
I might have to, yeah. It's bloody load shedding, eh? Like people have backups, and then when it goes out for so long, all the backups fall over as well.
You should even be able to select when you log on. It says, do you want to use phone audio?
Yeah, I'm just going to phone him quickly.
Hey, dude, sorry, I think load shedding's over, so that's upset the transformers. Give me 5 minutes, carry on with the meeting, and I will join you once we're back on full power.
Okay, so your thing's coming back on. Okay, cool. Okay, see you now. Like, because the other option is you could just talk on the phone now, or do you need to do something while the Wi-Fi connects?
No,
No, the bloody cell phone's not even working. Okay, no stress, dude. No,
just carry on for a second, and
okay.
I'll join as soon as this thing is back online.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks. Guys, load shedding has finished, so he's going to connect on. He's getting back on his Wi-Fi. Can I suggest we have a quick toilet break, coffee break, whatever? Let's just take 3 to 4 minutes. Let him get back on, and we can keep going. Otherwise, we're just going to waffle for 3 minutes anyway. We just have a quick toilet break. Sorry, I know that those of you who don't live in Africa don't know what we're talking about, but it doesn't actually matter how well organized you are. Okay, let's just take a coffee break. let's just, you should be able to hear me now. Let's just, anyone got any thoughts in terms of what we've heard so far? I know it's not a huge amount yet, but any thoughts or comments? I'm going to ask him where he is and how he's doing, but otherwise I'll phone him.
I suppose I got something to share, having experienced a couple of pretty close losses in the last couple of years, and I've got a great friend who actually is just about finished writing his memoirs, but collapsed in a fun run in 1988, and when he woke up from a coma after 3 months, he had no leg left, and it's a long story short. He had brain damage, and he's never ever had depression, but he's come up with this process how to get through grief and all of those quickly, and he helped me a lot, and it was very much around acceptance. And I got to acceptance pretty quickly in both situations. Still went through the process, but lots of conversations with him. It was getting to acceptance that helped me and allowed me to move on, I guess.
Yeah, I think to some extent it's what I was trying to say earlier, and I wish I could remember who said it, but something along the lines of like, it's where it's in our fears or in that pain or in that trauma that when you actually go there, that's where the answer lies. And I don't speak for everyone else, but certainly speak for myself. Like that's what I think I've avoided for a lot of my life. And it's interesting what you just said there, Graham, around acceptance, because yeah, that's often the hardest part,
And I've actually interviewed him, and I can share that audio with the group. It's quite extraordinary, because he other than phantom pain, he's never taken any drugs, and like the pain he must have went through was extraordinary, because his leg was amputated at the pelvis.
I don't know about anyone else, but I'd love to listen to the recording, please.
I'll get it to you.
Geez, they really are trying to make South Africa go to a standstill.
And then again at 4.
Why is this thing going on? How long is it? And when's it come back on?
10.
So the battery's down. It's unbelievable. So it's been on for 4.5 hours. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I have a backup battery, and we've been on load shedding for 4.5 hours, and it's now finally died. I actually give up. I don't know what more we're supposed to do. Right, let me try and improvise now. Has Faisal managed to join us yet? No. Anyone else got any comments around what we were just talking about there in terms of? I was asking Graham if you can share that link as I lost you. So can you guys hear me?
Okay.
Yeah. So I've gone onto my cell phone with data now. I don't really know what to say. Sorry, Graham, I don't know. Can you share that link on the WhatsApp group with us? Okay, just for those of you, if you don't mind, we're probably going to go over. Graham, I know you've got somewhere to go. I'll keep recording the session, but we've obviously lost the 20 minutes here or whatever with this chaos. And I know time is valuable to all of us, but I really want to make sure that Faisal gets the time to be able to do it properly. So I'm just trying to see where he's at. And my power should be coming back on in 10 minutes as well. So. Any other thoughts or comments around what we just went through? Anyone else been through stuff? I know certainly for me, whenever I go through my hardest times, I often look back and I find it's the year that I evolved the most. And so I've no doubt that 2022 will be a year I'll look back on fondly, but not want to repeat, if that makes sense. But I'm still looking forward to the fondly part. I want to be very clear on. Here's Faisal joining us. Is he there? Faisal, you back?
Hello?
Yeah, we got you now. We got you.
Wonderful. I'm so glad, and thank you for waiting. I'm sorry for this. I apologize on behalf of all of the machinery and utilities that are grinding away. I'm sure they're shoveling coal into the generators as we speak, just for our benefit. Thank you for waiting. I'm so glad to be here again. I don't know where I was, but I'll start again. And in fact, that few moments gave me a time to just sort of say, well, what would be of use to you the most? So what I'll do is this. It's so nice to have met all of you, at least to have heard your stories. Graham, I think Derek, Kerry, Shane, Mari, Wilco, Gina, Vanessa, Diana. If I could have something from you, perhaps just a field round of questions, perhaps that you might think I might be able to help with, be they as specific or as broad as you would like, then perhaps I could sort of focus my answers for you. So by any means, by all means, please let me have any reflections or things that you wish that I might be able to comment on.
So can I make a suggestion that either put your hand up, like you just with the reactions, so that we can just ask the questions, or if you don't want to ask them, you can type them. And Faisal, just while people are doing it, I don't see any hands up yet. You were talking about the difference on the degree of exceptionality, and it comes from, and you were talking about trauma and pain, and it comes from recognizing that a lot of our experiences in life are patterns. Again, I'm using my own language. You didn't use that, but you get my point. And I'd love you just to finish on that comment while we got the other questions coming through, because I was fascinated by where you were going. You know, we've all got this degree of exceptionality, but there's often stuff we've got to deal with to be able to go to the next level. Is how I understand it.
Yes. Well, yes. Thanks for bringing that. I'm going to try and share screen so that you can see what I mean in a simple. I've got a few graphics here which may be of use to you. So hold on, let's see if this works. Yes, okay. This one here. Right. Can you see that? Can you see? Yeah, there you are. Right. So for every 10 people who go through trauma, so the conventional understanding of trauma is obviously it's traumatic, and there's a big field of work on, post-traumatic stress disorder and how people might thrive. And I think before we were cut off cruelly by the airwaves here, I was talking about the analogy I use the most, which is a headline you might read in the papers or on social media: "Man in wheelchair climbs Everest despite his difficulties." And my reaction and my experience with a lot of my clients is almost the obverse of that, which is, well, it's because he was in a wheelchair that he climbed Everest. People achieve things quite consistently and exceptionally, not in spite of their difficulties, but because of them. The power of the human spirit is only partly within this idea we call resilience. which is sort of bandied around. Resilience, if you define it, is really that of being unaffected or not so damaged by difficulties, by traumas. But then there's another school of thinking which I became interested in partly through my own work when I was seeing clients who had tremendous difficulties, that had lobotomies, had epilepsies, they'd had terrible autisms. What I noticed was that a lot of these guys had skills and abilities which were definitely exceptional, definitely part of their repertoire, but which they had almost shut down because they didn't see value in them. They were not used in a field that was valuable. And so this graphic helps to understand this basis scientifically. And my mantra, as I told Scott before I present to any, I guess, new person, is truth is more important than consequences. And yes, nature doesn't care particularly for what difficulties you have gone for or what kind of wonderful environment you may have had. Improvement come and growth can come from all of those things. So this scientific look at trauma in a very simple way in the graphic describes what happens when people go through life-changing trauma. And it also reflects to smaller degrees of trauma, but this is really hardcore stuff. When I define trauma as a psychiatrist, it is the threat of losing life or limb or witnessing something truly that would cause anyone to become deeply bewildered, confused, or traumatized as a result of what they've seen or what they nearly endured, and which leads people to question life itself. So what we find is this: roughly 4 out of those 10 would have problems later on that are in keeping with what we recognize in the medical field, perhaps as post-traumatic symptoms. Now, this is more than 3 months later down the line. 3 months after a trauma, you're going to have adjustments. But beyond that, we can get people who have flashbacks, triggers, re-experiencing, and that sort of stuff. So we know that. 5 people on the other side would adjust and would accept, if you like, through their own internal processing or through talking to their friends or whatever, through their spiritual side, their religion, accept that something terrible happened, but I'll muddle through, I'll get through it. But one person goes through something called post-traumatic growth. And if people have heard of this, then it may be useful to sort of reflect on what that means. And if you haven't heard of it, then it's an exciting area, which I am particularly connected with, which helps to understand how some people who can go through something difficult can not only emerge just resilient, but can be galvanized and accelerate their own development. Just like the man who climbed the wheelchair. Why? Well, they maybe climbed the wheelchair, climbed Everest without or with his wheelchair. It was because, he might say, because I was told as a child I had polio and I'd never climb mountains, or I'd never be able to move. So that belief in itself triggered a sense of defiance, triggered a sense of self-belief, which was almost the antithesis to what we say should engender development. Oh, encourage your children, encourage this. But some people, as you probably know yourself, achieve things because they say someone told me I couldn't. There may be also other phenotypic elements that drive people to achieve highly. They could be that because this person had difficulty with mobility, they compensated. So they compensated to a certain extent by, if you like, putting themselves in a wheelchair. But even perhaps before this person had a wheelchair, if you've ever wandered around the streets of India, you will see people who are, on makeshift skateboards with very strong arms. And I sometimes use that analogy when people come to see me, who they may have elements of dyslexia or autism, or just they feel a bit different to other people. They feel like they constantly innovate and they're always shot down by their board members. They feel like they're restless and have lots of new ideas, but never quite find the traction in their own circle of colleagues or friends. And those elements, they do have a degree of genetic predetermination, and they lead a person, I can walk with them down a field of self-discovery, which is very bespoke to what that person, through their own history or through their own genetics or through their own evaluation of where they are, can help them to thrive. And I'm not saying that I'm trying to awaken some kind of giant within or these kind of things that I'm sure you've come across in your own personal development journey. I'm talking about something which I've come to call mental wealth, and it's sort of different to mental health. And if I may, I'll show you. I mean, you guys have kind of touched on it. Before I do that, are there any questions that have come up that may be worthwhile you guys asking me to focus on, or should I just continue? Nothing so far?
Yeah, if no one's chatting, I'd continue. People are very welcome to interact, put your hand up, ask questions, whatever.
Okay. So here's kind of where I start with. If everyone can see that, this is a neuropsychological model of the person, the brain, the mind, if you like. And these ingredients make you who you are. And what it's interesting about it, I mean, these are concepts which are related to the way the brain is structured. And so if we look at each in turn, the ego, I've called it the ego because we understand it to be the ego, but basically it's the basal areas of the brain. Those are your emotions, your instincts and desires, and they're broadly quite difficult to control. And in fact, we spend our whole lives trying to bring them under control. And we find that our wish to conquer, our wish to compete, our wish for victory, our wish to be liked, our wish to be famous, to acquire, to be secure, all of those things are, if you like, ego driven. But I detach the ego from ideas of Freud or whatever, because I think the word is sullied by what we understand to be ego or egomania. We all have ego, but we all have these drives. And I guess the Buddhists call it the inner monkey and that kind of thing. But there is a neuropsychological basis for it. The intellect, this is kind of what we have kind of evolved as a species. We're a hypersocial species. And so one of the things that we do better than other species is we can use logic and we can concentrate on things like facts and plans and cooperation with other individuals. So that's kind of what you do when you go to work. You hatch plans and you try to get buy-in from other people, and you try to get people to align with, by presenting them the logic or the facts. But then you might find that, well, I can't seem to convince people even when all the facts are there, what's going on. And what I try to move them towards is what neuropsychology is really bringing on over the last few years, which is the master. And so the intellect, if you like, is the neocortex, which is the frontal lobes. The master, if you like, is found in the OFC, or the orbitofrontal region, which is really a well-connected sense of personhood. How it manifests is how you observe yourself. And people mentioned principles. I can't remember who it was, but and forgive me for not crediting you, but I'll just take it as credit you as a group for being, quite aware of these things. But you mentioned things like trust, respect, and care. Those principles are really those which one has to engender, and one has to consciously try to steward as you develop your journey. And the concept of mental wealth, really, I even went so far as I haven't quite developed the app yet because I've been too busy writing the book, but I've parked the domain mentalwealth.app because it will become an app which is sort of interactive. I think to remember Diana wanted to create something which provides solutions for people. And I think we're very much in the same game. In fact, all of us, from the sound of things, are trying to provide solutions for people. And we want to be able to help them. Now, how these things align, if you like, is here. And what's interesting about this diagram, if you like, as a model of the mind, people mentioned spirits. I think someone even mentioned the spirit animal and how does one feel connected. And the spirit animal is an interesting archetype for connecting actually two regions, be it the ego and the central self. We have an affinity with humanity, but we also have an affinity with our own inner wishes, and trying to manage those affinities in a way that helps us to thrive is kind of the question that we all face. So what is troubling for mankind, humankind, if you like, is the emotional side, physiologically, is two things. First, it is primal, as in it's the first thing you use when you appraise anyone or anything. Your instincts, your emotions, how we judge people by appearance, for example, how your sense of smell. If you can pick up an old school book that you've picked up in the attic, you can suddenly have a flood of memories for what school was like, the smell of bleach in the school corridors and that sort of thing. And because it's quick, it's also very powerful. So broadly speaking, what it does, it overpowers the intellect. It overpowers the logical side. And that explains why many people make decisions which aren't particularly based on a compelling logical argument. So the question of, wow, how can I've presented all the facts to the board. It's a very convincing argument. Here's the thing. Why aren't people buying in? Well, the issue is that they seem to be stuck. Most people are, especially in boards, which are an interesting psychological phenomenon. Boards obey the rules of groups, but they pretend to use the intellect and wisdom, but often they function along the ego. There, I'm sure you all sound experienced enough to know that there may be ringleaders in boards who are not willing to go along, and no matter what, just because they don't like you or someone else. There might be people who are focused on their own secret agendas, which are quite apparent, but nobody wants to mention. And that is because the ego is as dominant as it is. We are, in the words of one of my friends is a zoologist, we are primates with evolving human qualities, right? So what I'll move across to is something that you guys mentioned, which is sort of right, well, what does all this fancy stuff mean in terms of well-being and how to move your lives forward over the next year or over the course of your future? And this, if you like, this is again evidence-based. I say truth is more important than consequences, and these elements are research-based. And what I do for a living is, if you like, it's not really aligned to what you'd get in coaching or in the industry as it is. In fact, I guess that's kind of why I kind of fell into this, because when I was doing the MBA, which was geared towards people, not undergraduates, but postgraduates. So most of my colleagues were, already sort of high achievers, and I was there as a tin pot doctor sitting next to construction billionaires and tech gurus and all these kind of guys. In fact, I was at Oxford at the same time that you've probably seen these two guys on TV, the Winklevi, as Zuckerberg called them, the two, Cameron and his brother Winkle, who had just been paid off 60 million by Zuckerberg, because the truth was they did invent Facebook. He just technologized it. But anyway, what it led them to ask me the question is, okay, this sounds really useful. It sounds different to what we've been hearing. What is it that makes a person well over and above just being free from illness? I see that a few of you have had issues with respect to your health goals, and those are laudable. You want to lose weight, you want to eat happier, you want to be in touch with the things that make you feel whole as a human being. So one of you mentioned being near the sea, and that's a very interesting symbolic and visceral experience, which I can totally align with. In fact, partly I live here now at the moment in Neisner, not far from Scott, where we have a lake and a sea just over the hill. Why is it that people are drawn to water? Well, I can explain how that might work, but at a level which I think puts it on evidential basis. So coming back to this diagram, what are the things that make a person thrive? And by thriving, I mean not just the absence of illness. In the same way that a physical coach, you might say, well, what does it take to be physically fit? Well, you need to exercise, you need to eat properly, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But if I ask someone, what does it take to be mentally fit? They mostly describe things which are the absence of pathology. So the absence, well, don't get too worried, don't get too stressed, don't drink too much, don't eat red meat, etc. But what are the things that actually make a person who's free from illness, or may even have illnesses? I've got people, believe it or not, who have psychosis, who still thrive in life. And actually, you probably know some of them because they happen to hide these issues very well and are driven by some of these beliefs, which may be slightly paranoid, but I call it productive paranoia, which incidentally you'll see in a lot of top-level CEOs, productive paranoia. It mimics psychopathy, but it isn't. But anyway, autonomy. People mentioned autonomy. What does autonomy really mean? Autonomy is principally very, very, very central to our notions of being a species with individuals who are free to do and to decide what they think. But autonomy is mostly misunderstood or misapprehended because autonomy depends on perception. Now you know that, and I'm not going to I'm not going to tell you anything new, that actually everything you see is a perception. What you might see, I use the 3 blind men and an elephant. If 3 blind men went to describe an elephant, the one who touches the trunk will say, well, the elephant's like a snake. The second one who grabs the leg will say, no, the elephant's like a tree. And the third one who grabs the ear will say the elephant is like a big leaf. And to question your perceptions is one of the main tools by which I help a person to recognize both their so-called weaknesses and their strengths. Because you probably have perceptions which are innate to you, which are different. You notice details that are different to other people. Maybe people have said that. And therein lies your quality. Sometimes that might come from something traumatic, that you notice threat better than other people. Most people who've been through threat will notice threat better. And could I tell you that, you know what? The one group of people who can tell a liar better than anyone else on earth, better than the FBI, the CIA, or even a high court judge. Does anyone know? Go on. You're muted.
Probably another liar.
Sorry? Another liar? No, not even that. Other liars, if you like, they're less interested in what we call acquisitive or facilitative liars or natural liars, or people who are simply defensive. No, the one group of people who statistically can tell a liar better than anyone else is those who are clinically depressed. How interesting. So even within something which is ostensibly a big problem, why is it that nature has conferred this strange ability upon people who are depressed? And T.S. Eliot would have said things well before the scientists discovered. He would have said mankind cannot bear too much reality. And philosophically, it could be that depression is the approach of reality to a point where it's inescapable. And too much reality can be particularly depressing. You can realize that actually life might be quite meaningless. Like people are deceptive. But to gain a handle on that allows you then to move forward. One of my sporting guys has a history of depression, but when we got him in touch with that, he was able to see that the depression wasn't quite something that he needed to accommodate or cure, but there was elements of it which were particularly useful to him, particularly things like dichotomous thinking or false fallacies. I'm either a winner or a loser, that kind of stuff, which can be useful. So autonomy is that power over your choices, but people don't quite recognize that their perceptions limit their choices. And your choice, for example, on how you judge a new person on your board might be colored by your ego, which jumps to conclude based on who they are, what they look like, what you think is they have to offer versus what they truly have to offer. Moving across, we have mastery. Well, all of you guys have described wishes to become more masterful in a certain area, be it investment, teaching, or financial proficiency. That does contribute to a sense of being well-being, right? That a sense of and offering value to yourself or the people who matter to you in a given role. Somebody also mentioned higher purpose, and that is especially driving. If you can give a person a sense of meaning, Viktor Frankl, I think he said that man can survive almost any what as long as he has a why, something like that, and that can allow people to persist through difficulties. And there are people who formed entire business models out of these. I mean, if you like, ideally, if you ever come across the likes of McKinsey and whatnot, they're specialists at being able to present the idea that they can show you something that you can't when you're in a crisis. And they charge you very, very handsome fees for that. But they're doing nothing more than coming in at a time when your own perception of your crisis is something beyond your control. and they can connect you to a higher purpose. Be it, why did you set out to do this? Why are you really doing what you're doing? Is it for some spiritual gain? Is it for a sense of control? What demons or what positive attributes are driving you to do what you do? Relatedness, well, preaching to the converted here, but the fact that you're in a group is already evidence that some of you or all of you believe to a certain extent that being in a group does assist the development process. But unconnected to that, perhaps you are interested in how to manage your relationships. And there's a fair amount of evidence on how this works. A bit of study from Stanford a few years ago looked at technical proficiency versus soft skills in terms of the corporate environment. And what they found was that the person who manages the people around them better was likely to have, well, that has a 75% influence on your corporate ascendancy. And the remaining, the technocratic skills, be it you're a good financial analyst or a good engineer, that only accounts for 25%. And you probably recognize this as leaders and as individuals, that actually being able to manage the people comes first. Only then, when you get them on side, can you then introduce the technical idea. And this strangely relates to what I know about the brain. We know that roughly the ego, the emotion side, is 4 times as a broad sort of figure. I don't like using just bland numbers, but roughly 4 times stronger than the intellect. And so it resonates with the 3-to-1 kind of, well, that's why it's so much more useful to be able to manage people, to manage conflict, to manage cooperation, to be able to get buy-in. And the 5th one is moments of joy. Moments of joy float throughout your life. And they are moments when you seize the opportunity to gain just a little bit of a high, a little bit of happiness. And they are strangely elusive, especially for high achievers, except for those high achievers who have come from very difficult backgrounds, who then are rooted in those backgrounds. And there's a strange relationship. We once did a study where we looked at, in the UK, I was working for the Priory, and we looked at the FTSE 250. Now, the FTSE 250 are basically companies on the Financial Times share index. And we looked at those companies who were founded by families or by single founders. And then we audited them for their, if you like, their mental profiles. And we found that they were vastly overrepresented in terms of people who'd had significant traumas in their childhoods, be they poverty, abuse, neglect, and what have you. And what led them to then thrive in the corporate world? What is it? Was there connection? There clearly was some kind of connection here. And they described a strange kind of duality between their memories of being mistreated, or knowing that the world is perhaps a cruel place, knowing that perhaps trust is a very scarcely earned commodity, and building trust and losing it. Building trust is much more difficult than losing it, which can be instantaneous. Those tend to be strangely helpful, but at the same time, those people had a strange momentary appreciation for where they've got. You may get it yourself. People sometimes mislabel it as imposter syndrome. Look at what I've done. Here I was, a country boy from wherever, a country girl from this, and how come I'm in charge of these things? And there is, if you like, that is your own spirit, your own higher self, imploring you to be thankful. And if you really appreciate those moments and actually schedule them into your life as a definite thing, and that's the kind of stuff I create toolkits for, that can enhance your own development in a way that is what I call by the back door. And this back door is really what I work on more than anything else with people. A lot of what you want to achieve is, or what you want to be, is from your conscious mind, what you think is useful to you. And a lot of why people don't get ahead with that sort of stuff is often it comes from either the ego or from the intellect. And those things are not particularly good at talking to each other, and they tend to fight. And they are particularly disconnected to something called your pre-conscious. Your pre-conscious is the reason why, for example, I could take any one of you and I could say, well, okay, here's red or blue cards. I want you to decide to pick a red or a blue card, but I will put something on your head and I will be able to predict about 15 seconds before you choose which one you're going to choose. And you're going to say, well, how does that work? That's because your pre-conscious does huge numbers of calculations and decisions well before you know them. And your pre-conscious can get in the way or can obscure or enable your decisions in life, and is often accountable for why people set out to achieve things but regret or find themselves bewildered as to how come I didn't quite achieve those things. It's because you're not quite connected to those things which are, if you like, in your back room, your operations department. We all want change, right? It's fair. Not all change leads to improvement, but all improvement comes from change. So what are the things that can help a person to change? I think you guys are a self-selected group. I've heard within the language that you guys use that there is, each one of you has the experience of somehow being different, somehow being, there is a clarity about the way you describe your lives, each one of you, that seems to be earned. And I don't know with each one of you where that comes from, but I know it's there. But I'll explain to you the kind of things that can lead to self-recognition, which if you can achieve that, I mean, business guys and CEOs, whatever, they all describe this idea of self-awareness is the best quality a leader can have in repeated interviews and surveys. And yet, oddly enough, truth is more important than consequences. When you look at self-awareness in CEOs, it's actually lower than most of the employees. Why is that happening? It seems to be as if the ascendancy into a position of leadership causes a diminution of people willing to question you and an increase in the size of your ego, and being able to, the idea that you can control the things that you can control is really a self-delusion at best, but for CEOs and leaders that is particularly pronounced. But what does that mean? Well, understanding who you are. Understanding who you are comes from a very basic, I mean, I started really by sometimes almost clumsily throwing my genetic phenotypic screens at people. And I still, I mean, in my current book, which is about a couple of weeks away from publication, I present some of those tools to people, how to understand if you are genetically somehow exceptional. Now, it's not to do with 23andMe or sending your genetics off to someone, because that is utterly useless. Markets itself as useful, but is because something called epigenetics gets in the way. So nothing about your own genetic map predicts what you are. It's your phenotype that matters. And your phenotype is extremely important. Now, as a description, somebody once looked at something called a DRD4, which is a dopamine sort of reward signal phenotype. And people who have got lots of copies of that gene seem to be quite restless, innovative, and if they've got other genes, they tend to be also psychopathic or creative, and that sort of stuff. And somebody then said, well, why don't we geomap these people? Where do they end up? And there is a map which I found somewhere. It's on my other mainframe, but it was beautiful. People with this restlessness gene, if you look at the whole world, they seem to go towards the coastlines. It's as if they all are so restless that they keep heading towards the ends of the earth, literally. And some of them then just love being in the sea, because the sea gives them a sense of like that there isn't an end, that there is a containment within the nothingness of the sea. There is a warmth about it. There's also other evolutionary reasons why. And there may be other things which define you as different. There may be insomnia. There may be things like defiance. There may be time agnosia. A lot of you may find yourself coming very late to meetings or being extremely particular about time. Why is that happening? Why have you always had that? And that is partially because of something called time agnosia, which is noticeable in people who have leadership type traits manifest. Why? It's because the ability to focus on something that matters is accelerated in such people to the point where everything else becomes just a blur. So you might recognize that when I'm really concentrating on something, the whole world disappears, and you might be able to reach that state of flow far more easily than others. Why is that happening? It's because you might have that sort of propensity towards that. Why doesn't logic work? Well, why can't people be persuaded to change even when it's good for them? Rationality is not a basis for change. For example, if you look at, we've all had exams, presumably, and you might recognize the fact that when you were a kid and you're in an exam, the more you wanted to pass the exam, the less you did about it. You were so overwhelmed, you kind of put it off. You didn't even look at the books. And then finally, when a couple of weeks before the exam came, you looked at the books and then you organized your desk. You did everything to avoid the exam. Why is that? You were clearly very motivated. So going to yet another motivational talk, or being in touch with NLP or whatever, which is a pseudoscience, by the way, I don't discredit it, but I think it is a pseudoscience, is basically going to make you worse. Why? Because motivation is not the problem. Execution is the problem. Your motivation is where you perform optimally. You need to have better execution. And that's how we we need to reduce your motivation and break it down into tiny, tiny, tiny steps. I read one line at a time. I read the next paragraph. There are also, well, what does that mean in terms of persuasion? How do people convince others to do things? Well, if you can key in to their principal beliefs, and what I mean by that is to look at essentially their egos and their emotions much more than you do their logical factors. And to use the example, once I remember in Oxford, we were meeting with we were doing some work for a space project. And in Oxford, there's lots of spin-out companies. And one of them was looking at how to prepare the mindset for people who are going to be in space. And oddly enough, there we were. I mean, I'd been a neurosurgeon previously, but it was literally a meeting of brain surgeons and rocket scientists talking to each other. But what was interesting was the fact that in order to engage a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon, it's not really by talking to them about their field. It's by talking to them about what is on their plate most of the time. If they wanted to talk to my professors, I was a junior at the time, then they didn't need to talk about or impress him with their knowledge of neurosurgery. They needed to talk about how to get him sponsored for his next study, because that's really what occupies professors most of the time. And that ability to understand what people want at a primal level it's invaluable. It often explains and opens up a lot of avenues that people who are bewildered with their lives find difficult to discombobulate, to sort of pry apart. Self-awareness is important, and a lot of what I do with people is help them to become more self-aware, and that becomes, if you like, a journey of self-discovery which is unflinching. And you cannot become self-aware on your own, and you cannot necessarily become self-aware by talking to people who are inexpert at it. And the simple reason for that is there are blind spots that you have. You cannot, by definition, know what you cannot see about yourself, but people will see things about you that you haven't identified. How do you invite people to point those things out? In your position, you might find it difficult because you're at the top of a tree and people are going to be reluctant. So how do we examine that? How do we pull that out so that you know, and you might discover things that, I didn't realize that that's what made me so productive. To give you an example, self-awareness can be disarmingly disenfranchising. We did a bit of work with a parole board in Israel some time ago. And we looked at factors which influence positive decisions for parole prisoners who are applying for release. And there were judges, circuit judges, or even what we call magistrates, sort of solicitors who were time served. And we were looking at decision factors and what it took for them to make a positive decision about a person being granted for parole. But do you know what the most powerful thing we found was in granting a positive decision for a prisoner? It was alarming, but also quite sweet. Does anyone have any idea? Have a wild stab at it.
I would say it's the time of day.
Very close, very good. Time of day, partly, yes, early on, but it was how recently the granting board had tea and biscuits. That was simply the most powerful effect. You know, these are people's lives. And these are judges who obviously think of themselves as judicious by definition and morally upstanding and whatever. And yet, so these strange things can be particularly useful in understanding how to manage a group. You know, for example, we can't meet together, but what I've learned to do when I meet with people in a room is some strange kind of stuff, which, although it's corny and almost too base, it has a consistent enabling effect. For example, when people win something, right, they gain not so much a sense of, well, men tend to gain a sense of ego inflation, but what they tend to also gain is a sense of cooperativity. People are far more magnanimous and able to connect with the losers once they've won. But when you observe human beings who win something, they all do this, right? They all put their hands up. And why is that happening? What is it that makes that? And what's curious is if you see a blind person winning something, they do the same thing. So it clearly can't be visual. What's going on here? And so we ran some experiments where we looked at how people, can we reverse engineer this stuff? If people can stand before a meeting or a conversation and just stand like that, is that going to influence the way in which their meetings or their negotiations go? And clearly, it seemed to have an incredible influence. They seem to reach more productive conclusions. So it's hilarious how, you know, I don't want to be biologically reductionist, but you might say, well, I came from a field of science, but that seems to work. The other thing that seems to work is putting your hand on the back of somebody. Why? Because there's oxytocin release. The other thing that I talked to Scott about this, the other thing that seemed to work is don't sit facing each other. Ideally walk, sit and walk in the same direction. Don't have peace talks, have peace walks. And I described to Scott an experiment where they had Palestinian and Israeli school kids. This wasn't, you know, schoolyard stuff. It was serious. And the rate at which they found solutions and compromises in a controlled setting where one lot was sitting and one lot were facing each other and the other were walking was much higher in those who were walking. Interesting, isn't it? So those sort of things are base level, but they are very useful because they help to, I think, undress a lot of our assumptions on what makes people change. And a lot of what I do is based on that and often tends to throw a spear through a lot of the bump that seems to circulate in leadership psychology and testing. You've probably all come across things like, I mean, one bugbear of mine is something called the MBTI. Have you heard of the MBTI? You probably have. Well, the MBTI is called Myers-Briggs Type Inventory. And some people almost use it in parlance, say, I am an ENFJ or an INTJ or whatever it is. And that purports to be a very powerful tool in determining how groups work in corporate environments. But when you drill down on it, it was invented by Isabel Myers and Elizabeth Briggs, a historian and an English teacher. And it's full of what's called, if you like, Barnum statements or Forer effects. Have you ever heard of Barnum statements or Forer effects? Anyone? No? Shake head. Basically, the business world is full of proprietary kind of stuff where they will claim ostensibly to understand who you are, and they'll give you a report, an analysis. And that report is kind of self-fulfilling. It will be mostly complementary. Or if it's critical, it will be critical in a way that is also complementary. If you can imagine, if you like, sitting for a job interview that you may have done in the past, or you might be in future, and they say, well, you know, name one of your weaknesses. The common wisest thing to say is to dress up a strength as a weakness. Oh yes, one of my weaknesses is I work too hard. I really do. I just can't stop working. Really, please help me. Help. And obviously employers are going to love that, right? Well, that's what these kind of tests will do. They'll kind of, nothing about them is really unflinching. It's all kind of designed to be like a cold read. So if you want to make things stick, I would summarize and end off by saying a couple of other things which are related, but not quite. When you set out to set your goals, before you set out, there should be a process where you understand where your goals are coming from. Are they coming from your ego, from your intellect, or from your highest self? How are you going to serve them? And when you then set out to achieve them, have you accounted for all three parts of your mind when it comes to setting the tactics by which you achieve them? By that, I mean, the three parts of your mind all react to slightly different stimuli and rewards. So the common parlance is, well, we go for reward, we go for victory. So we break something down and then we celebrate the small victory. Well, that's only part of the equation, really. What ignites truly successful people is, for example, I don't know, you know, one of my, I guess, bottom line guys, when I worked with a financial firm in Mumbai, they were all very commission driven. And for what it's worth, there was a kind of macho culture of, you know, the more I earn, the better I am, because it's all openly competitive. But who performed better was not those guys who just wanted to create more money, but those guys who found, well, because that served the ego, that serves the victory. But those who could connect that achievement with intellectual tactics, and those who were actually more cooperative rather than more competitive. Because let's face it, we all think the most, a lot of you guys would probably have struggled with this. You believe independence is the highest form of achievement or being. And we confuse independence with autonomy. They're not the same thing. Do you know what the higher form of being is compared to independence? It's interdependence, because we are a hyper-social species. You will get further when you take the risk of creating dependencies with people who have as much to lose as you do. That is what really brings higher principles. So those guys in the firm who became more wedded to working with their colleagues then achieved higher altogether, who took their enemies and turned them into friends. And those who had a higher sense of meaning, there was no real culture of giving to the poor, or what capitalist companies do. They take a Calvinistic idea of, well, yes, we are Goldman Sachs, and we will give X amount to the poor, we'll sponsor this and that. It's almost like a side effect. But if you integrate it with the very outcomes that you do, the more we earn, the more time we must then take to take a percentage of what we earn and go into the trenches. So what we did with those guys in Mumbai is, don't just give the money, go out and work with some of the, and there was a project in Mumbai called the, well, I don't know what it was called. It was a clever name, but it was basically trying to insert toilets into the slums. Don't just give the money, go and dig a freaking toilet, right? Go insert it. And oddly enough, those guys who took time to actually do that, to connect with people and get dirty, the time that they spent doing that was ostensibly took time away from their trading, but actually made them better traders. Why? Because they had some sense of higher meaning and achievement. And when you do things that are of genuine use to other people, when you give of yourself, neurologically, what that seems to do is open up a part of your hyperspecies mind, which enhances your creativity. There's a sort of level of well-being which arrives from taking the risk of giving from yourself. And the more you give of yourself, as long as it's not giving away not making yourself a doormat, the more that part of the mind seems to sort of enjoy that. And it's probably the reasons why Homo sapiens beat Neanderthals. And we are still those primates with evolving human qualities. So be aware of that. Give of yourself if you want to achieve higher. Thirdly, if you want to achieve higher, when you set out to practice something, be completely unattached from any notions of success or failure. If you want to change a habit, for example, and you say, I'm going to try and do this, I'm going to eat better, X, Y, and Z, I'm going to meditate more, whatever, you will not see a change for up to 1 year. And that's because of something called neuroplasticity, which is common partly, you've probably heard of neuroplasticity, but neuroplasticity dictates that when you are trying to make a true change, what you recognize as being worthy, be it, well, I'm going to eat better this way, or I'm going to meditate this way, those things come from the intellect and, if you like, from the higher self. Those things, even though you know them and you practice them, they will not resonate at the level of your ego for a good year. You will feel frustrated and you'll feel you're getting nowhere. Why? Because neurobiologically, the brain simply is reluctant. The brain is a fatty, lumpy sponge. And to move fats around takes a long time. So even if you keep doing the right thing, you will not know it and you will not feel it. And you will mostly just sort of depart from that because you think you haven't actually got there. But if you persist, you will find that it starts to click, because neuroplasticity, that's what happens. You will then get all of your parts of your mind, the slowest part especially, the ego, to join in with that change. So I hope, I know it's a mouthful, but I hope that this has given you a slightly wordy but principled look at the kind of things that may help you to achieve change next year. And by all means, I'm open to emails. I don't see very many clients now. I've only got, very few clients, but I hope I can be of use to you guys, because I've told Scott this, I can't help but like Scott. I don't know why. He's a lovely guy. It reminds me of me when I was young, white, stocky, sporty. But he's just a lovely guy, and you're very fortunate to have him. Questions or comments are invited. Maybe I should put my email address for you guys, and so you can get in touch with me or my secretary or whatever. Where's this messaging part? Anyway, I hand over back to you.
Can I ask a quick question just to clarify? So what you said there, the three things, if you're really wanting to kind of make next year a different year, and again, tell me if I got this right, but number one is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Number two is giving more of yourself. And number three is not being attached to the outcome. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, broadly. Those are really nice ways of pinning down what I said in a very wordy way. There are other factors, but the headlines, those are massively important things. Be detached from the out. If you can tell people one thing, be uninterested in the outcome. It's not the outcome that matters. You have no real influence on the world. As you probably know, you're all experienced enough to know that life doesn't give a shit about your plans, right? Life is mostly as it appears in front of you. If you want to make a good past, your sole task is to deal with the next 5 minutes in as principled and as coherent a way as possible. And if you can move your thinking towards that of the center, the one which judiciously looks at the ego and the intellect and appraises you as a human being, both as an animal and as a person who is in Avicenna. Avicenna was a philosopher who had this thought experiments of the flying man, a disembodied soul who is trying to be of use but has no limbs and arms. What is it that animates and ignites you but doesn't steal from your rationality? It's not just greed. It's not just wanting more. You can detach from those. It sounds almost Buddhist, but it's actually strangely neuropsychologically valid. Then you will be in touch with the power to actually influence things. Oddly enough, you will start achieving things as a side effect rather than as the main target. Does that make sense?
sort of. I don't know about anyone else, but I feel like these planes are flying over my head. I'm trying to grapple ideas, but it's yeah. Maybe I speak for myself, and everyone else understands exactly what you're saying. Derek, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, if I can just, I've kind of experienced what you're saying in the corporate world and in organizations like where I serve. They talk about the P's. Proper planning prevents poor performance. But this flies in the face of that, because you can plan all you like, and then COVID comes along and cuts you down at the knees, and then you think, well, all right, COVID's going to be 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and it turns out to be 2 years. So the newest, my approach has been your resilience, your ability to adapt, your ability to assess the. I'm a pilot as well, and we in flying we have a thing ADA: assess, decide, act.
Mm-hmm.
So you get into a bad situation, you assess, you decide, you act. If that action turns out to be wrong, you assess, you decide, you act again. And that's how you get through the situation. So you apply ADA in your life, and so planning is okay, and a lot of people find comfort in planning, and it's necessary, but you must be able to act and react now.
Absolutely, so useful. And I would go so far as to say a lot of this planning that we do is somehow often blinds us to what may be truly helpful. And the thought experiment I sometimes sit with people is, okay, imagine you're setting up a new app, a social media app, which is going to beat all the other ones. And you want to put together a bunch of people who are really aware of how people connect and how to make friends and that kind of stuff. And you're recruiting for this, and you want a nest of people who will be able to design this app in a useful way. So you would hope, or your HR people or your psychologist, whoever, might then say, okay, well, yes, we want people who are so inclined. You plan for that, you expect for that, and you have your person qualities and your qualifications, etc. And then you get some guy who's basically a recluse, who doesn't really know how to make friends, who's completely detached and doesn't have any idea. You wouldn't recruit him at all. You'd just go, there's a waste, why are you even here? And yet, the most successful social media app in the world, arguably one of the most valuable companies in the world, was founded by exactly one of those guys. Zuckerberg is famously socially inept. What is it? Why would he have not passed the recruitment test? It's because his aloofness, he had a much greater need than everyone else. So if you ask an autistic person or a loner, what would you in a fantasy world like in order to connect to people? He would explain Facebook to you. He said, well, I'd like to know what they like, what they don't like, where they went to college, what they like on holiday, what makes them laugh. That is the kind of thinking. So our plans, especially in the corporate world, they're so determined by consensus, so determined by what we think is received wisdom, that a lot of it needs to be thoroughly re-examined. And I guess that's kind of what brought me to the attention of people who were in those industries, because they had, as Scott said in the beginning, they'd tried doing the same things, but found no result, and they didn't quite know where to go with those things. So I agree. Don't not plan altogether, but be open enough to the idea that a lot of what you know may be completely useless at worst.
Can I, Faisal, my last question, and I'm conscious of your time and everyone's time, is we're going into an interesting period now with Christmas, call it the festive season, call it whatever, wherever people are, but generally there's some downtime over the next couple of weeks. And you spoke a lot about self-awareness. And if I was to ask you using an I question, but I'm asking it on behalf of everyone, what would you give as a couple of tips that I, but again, I'm asking for everyone here, could do around self-awareness? If that's the first thing you said self-discovery, you said blind spots. You did say
Yes.
you can't do it on your own, blah, blah, blah. So what I'm trying to understand is what can I do around self-awareness?
Well, there is a couple of primers. So if people are going to, for example, coach with me, if I've got a waiting list, then I use that waiting list productively. And I say, well, okay, you've got 3-4 months before you come on. This is what I want you to do. And well, I give them really a simple neuropsychological task. And it's found in things like, I think there's a book called The Artist's Way. And I said, well, write or talk in a way that you were offering an invisible person or a god or a spirit. And spirituality does come into it. I mean, a lot of voluntary work I do, if you Google me, you won't find any of my corporate work because it's way too, people don't like that in the public eye. But partly why I'm in Africa is I connect spirituality to psychology, and most of my work is voluntary. It happens to be Islamic, but it's frankly, it just occupies that vehicle because that's my own background, but I'm not particularly wedded to it. But anyway, the thing that helps you to gain self-awareness at first, self-discovery, is perhaps write in an unadorned way, not with so much with questions, why is this happening to me, what can I do, but write what's happening to you and just write about your thoughts, splurge it out and make a commentary. We have done this as humanity for eons, but we have kind of under the doctrine of independence or sensibility or politeness, we don't do it, but we all used to do it to the old man in the village or our grandparents or whatever. But if you disclose things about yourself and just note your emotions, note, I feel this, or I feel that, and I'm not sure about this, and note them down, there is a sort of element of mindfulness to it. And mindfulness actually neuropsychologically connects to the ability to create a third entity of yourself, something that is almost looking at what you write or what you say to God or to the space around you. Oh, it's interesting that I'm struggling with this. To be able to do that in the moment, what you will then discover or create is this sort of third eye, the ability to sort of hover over and above your own direct perceptions, to notice elements of you which seem to be more instinctive and appraise things rather too rapidly, because you will, every single one of us. I mean, if a high court judge can be so influenced by tea and biscuits, then all of us can be very much subject to those fields. And look, you don't necessarily have to look at those, but it's the process. And how this works is when you start writing anything that bothers you or makes you happy, anything at all, when you visually look at it or when you hear it, there appears to be a bit of short-circuiting going on. First of all, your feelings. The emotional side, the ego is not verbal, it's non-verbal, it only presents things to you in terms of images and impressions. I don't like this person, I don't know why, whatever, or well, that's pretty, or no, go this way, you don't quite know. And those things, you don't find, they don't occupy words very well. But when you force them to occupy words, you are in the mind. I will show you how that is tracking to a couple of areas, namely your temporal lobe on the left-hand side, your speech generation areas, and to your frontal lobe. You are forcing a translation of feelings into conscious facts. It doesn't matter what you write, as long as you are making that effort. And then when you look at that, or you read it, or you hear it, what's interesting is the idea that when you hear yourself, like I hear myself speak now, a part of my brain also doesn't recognize that as my voice. It recognizes it as an external stimulus. And so saying it to myself, there's a partial reinforcement. And so I hear my own words. And you might say, well, it's a sign of madness to talk to yourself. But actually, what it is, it's a prevention of madness. When you see people talking to themselves, what they're trying to do inadvertently is try to sort of reinforce their own thoughts when they've got too much of a noise going on. So that is a first process, if you like, of self-discovery. You need a couple of tools to do that. And it's too short in this forum to sort of describe what to do next. But I do list those depending on the client. I'll select which tools will help them, be it the things like you might come across ideas like the Johari window, you might come across the perceptive aptitude test, and some things which I just designed bespoke, depending on what the person wants to know about themselves. Because that really is very, very crucial, self-awareness. And it's never an endpoint. Like I said to you, don't be worried about the result. Be only concerned with the fact that you're doing it. Nobody ever reaches self-awareness, but everyone who's good practices it and know that it goes up and it goes down and it varies according to situations. Very simply, your self-awareness, if you're standing in a lift and the lift gets stuck, suddenly your awareness of yourself might be caught out because you hate being in small spaces. But then you discover that you're stuck in a lift with a bunch of lift engineers. And then you suddenly feel okay because they're going to fix the problem. But so that your self-awareness, your identity varies according to the situation. Then the next time you're stuck in the lift, it's with a bunch of kids who are panicking more than you are, but you don't panic because you recognize you have a responsibility to them. So strangely enough, you have a different identity. So your self-awareness is pliable, it's variable, it's evolving. And the more contextually, the more angles where you can get at it. When you've been through some emotional thing, do this, write it down, think about it, reflect on it. Those will be very revelatory to you of the capabilities that you have. And there is always a bias, initially, especially, to try to flatter yourself, or the opposite, to try to demonize yourself. Oh, what I notice is I'm a bastard. Be unflinching, be accurate, make efforts to write something which you think is factually more close to the truth. Don't just splurge, but think, what does this really say? Because the more effort you put into it, doesn't really almost matter what you write, but the more effort you put into it, the closer you will get to what is actually going on there. And you will accelerate. I mean, we know this happens, even with kids. It's no surprise that some of the more active aware schools have periods of meditation or confession with their young kids. Because what is the purpose of primary school development? Arguably, it's nothing to do with, intellectual or technical skills. It's the ability to socialize and to know who you are, to foster this growing sense of intellect to the point where actually they can be a centered person. And I have a big problems with education, but that's another hobby altogether. I hope that again, waffly way of introducing the subject, but I hope that answers it partly.
So all of us are doing some journaling over the festive season, is what I'm hearing. Can I suggest, we're on at 2.5 hours, and I think obviously people have possibly got other things to do. Can I make a suggestion? Two things. Firstly, just from my side, Faisal, I really appreciate your time today. I'm not going to lie, I'd be very surprised if everyone doesn't feel a little bit like me, which is where I took lots of notes and I'm feeling quite overwhelmed. Like, it's a lot of information, and it's sitting over here, and I'm going to have to go and synthesize and think about it. I don't know if I'm the only one in the room or if anyone else wants to agree that it's fascinating to me, and I've really enjoyed it. But equally, I'm going to have to take some time to get to grips with it, because it's not quite what I'm used to or have heard of.
Mission
before.
accomplished, Scott. Mission accomplished. I set out, if you like, at the bottom of this, if I can leave you with more questions and answers, then I've achieved what I want. That's essentially what I've set out to do, because it is Aristotelian, if you like, who declared one point, was it Aristotle or Plato? Says, the more I know, the less I realize I actually know. Mm. But to be at peace with that. If you can be at peace with that, then, as Kipling said, yours is the world, my son, and everything in it. Okay. But I'm glad that I befuddled you. I didn't intend to do it facetiously, but I am aware that what I know unconsciously can come across slightly for people. If I talk to anyone individually, I don't do that. I walk them through it slowly. But yeah, be unafraid of being nicely bewildered.
Unafraid, I'm just writing that down, of being nicely bewildered. Perfect. Well, what I suggest we do is, if anyone's got any questions, I would suggest, again, I don't know if Faisal's available, but we can, he sent through his email, you can ping it. I can put us in contact, but what I'd suggest we do is do a checkout now if people need to duck. So I'm just going to do it on the screen as I see it. It's literally just a simple checkout, one takeaway from today that you've had, and one action item you're committing to until we see each other in January. I do need to talk a little bit of admin, but I want to do the checkout with Faisal in case he needs to duck. So Derek, let's start with you, top left. Vilko, Kerry, Mari, Graham, Shane, Vanessa, and Dinah.
Right. So Scott, today's session leaves me wanting to know a lot more. I think it's a matter of a lot of the stuff resonating with with experiences, particularly in the last 18 months that I've had, and just I wish I could sit down for hours and just process it more, because a lot of these things are what you explained, Faisal, are things that I've experienced. So the biggest question that sits in my mind is, how do we take those attributes, those good things, and we apply them to the greater good, if you want to call it that. The greater good mean your family, mean the where you're involved, and so on. And what I'm acutely aware of, which is quite weird, is that my farm and the business is taking second place to this whole lot. It's there's something different from just the business that puts food on the table. There's a different story going on here, which is apparently more important. Thanks, Scott.
Awesome, thank you, Derek. Volker.
Yeah, thank you very much, Faisal. That was a very interesting way to look at it. It reminds me of something I read one day around an old Sufi saying that goes something like, in your dysfunctional personality is the gateway to the soul.
That's Rumi. Yes, that's Rumi, I think. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That's Rumi. And I think that describes a lot of what you said today, or just re-emphasizes that again, especially the self-awareness part. So that's definitely something I will revisit again. And definitely I'll review this video again because there's so many nice things that you dropped today. So thank you for that.
Awesome, thank you. Kerry, how are you?
It was great. I love everything that's got to do with the mind, and anything we can learn is awesome. So thanks very much for that. Takeaway, I've just got notes and notes and notes here. So I'll go through it and sort of put it in some sort of order for myself. But it's also good because we're actually helping somebody at the moment, and they're going through, we can see repeated patterns coming through, but they need to change their behavior. They're wanting to do it, and we're just not able to. It's how do you get somebody to actually change what you can see, but they want to change, but they don't know how to change. And they basically have admitted they're self-destructing and have, even considered taking their own life. And they've told us that repeatedly. So it's quite hectic. So I may reach out to you, Faisal, and just see if that is something that you may help with, or I don't know.
Please do. I like the question. I might not be able to answer it. I'm never convinced I can answer anything effectively, but I think that's curiously enough one of my quirks. The feeling of being lost is what drives me to do my best.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, because she needs to change. It's basically she needs help, and we want her to go and see somebody that knows their stuff. This isn't our department. We can only take her so far. Yeah, and how to convince them they've got to see somebody.
Awesome, Ari.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very informative, a lot of information. Definitely have to go through all these notes. I've also been taking ferocious amount of notes. I think two things that jump out of me at the moment is where are the goals coming from in terms of the ego, the intellect, and the higher self, and to have them working together is what I understand. And that brings me to something which I've always thought to be good for me to work with, and in terms of that we have 3 dialogues that goes on within us all times, and that is the words that we speak, the emotions that we feel, and the thoughts that we think. And those 3, from my experience, need to be in alignment in order to achieve something. So I don't know if that's on the same level there. And then the second thing is, which I really enjoyed, was to not be attached to the outcome. I think that takes a lot of pressure off myself. But thank you, and I would love to actually see you on this platform again, Faisal. It was absolutely really superb talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mari. Graham.
Faisal, you realise how complicated the human mind is. I think Derek and I are pretty lucky in that we work in farming and we have such a connection with nature, and I guess, you know, a lot of my learning comes from animals because they only live in the present. And my favourite quote, which was shared with me last year, is the future will evolve in the present. And I suppose that's my premise, is whatever I'm doing right now will deliver what my future is. And I think we get so caught up in thinking about the future. I don't really care about that part in my every moment. It's just, what am I doing right now that is going to position myself to be when the future's coming at me. I'm not going into the future.
Awesome. Shane.
Yeah, thanks very much. Really enjoyed that. The one thing that jumped out, similar to Mari, was being detached from the outcome. So just last week, I came across this same concept, and it was nothing to do with the way you were talking about it, but I've just realized now that you can become detached from the outcome in many different areas, and it actually that really helps a lot. I think we're so focused on the outcome that we don't see that there's other ways of doing it, and it just takes the pressure off. So really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane. Vanessa.
Thanks very much, Faisal. That was very interesting. The things that stood out for me is there was a lot of similarities with the work that I've done. Some of them being that your perceptions limit your choices. That is something, and understanding what your ego does and what it has learned to do from your experiences to protect you from repeating mistakes of the past. And being aware of that is very important in achieving outcomes. I firmly believe in that. Spirit guide meditations, they are the most amazing things that I do in this work. And from what I understood from what you explained, it's similar to what you said in writing down. It's being the observer in your own life and actually seeing what you are doing from an observer's point of view. And they are very powerful, I have to say that. And then not being attached to the outcome. Yes, enjoying the journey, getting to that goal, and actually enjoying the process of getting there, keeping that tension in seeing your outcome and attaining your outcome. It actually does make the outcome that much easier. But it's very difficult for us because we keep saying that we've got to orientate to that goal. So we keep thinking we just got to work to the goal.
Yes, that's right. Remind me of, I think, a saying from the Bhagavad Gita: one never stumbles over a mountain, one only stumbles over small rocks.
Who's that? Diana.
Last but not least,
Diana, can I suggest, Diana, can I suggest,
and then all I can do is
can I suggest you switch your camera
for
off?
me, it's more the
So can you
I'm
switch your
listening.
camera off? It'll be better with your camera off. We're battling to hear your audio. Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Okay. Is that better?
That's much
All right.
better. Yeah,
From my side, I could only put my hands in the air because for me that is what everything is symbolized or that we've discussed. Thank you, Faisal, for the informative information. And yeah, it means there's more to be and to become self-aware about myself.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Diana. Gina, anything you want to say? I know I just want to check. I don't want to assume.
I just want to say I really enjoyed that as well. It was very interesting to listen in, and thanks for letting me be a part today just to learn everything that was spoken about.
Awesome. Thanks very much. And from my side, Faisal, I just want to say thanks very much as well. I've said it already. I learned a huge amount. I agree with Derek that I want to go deeper. I feel like a kid that's been like taken to the candy store and gone like, yeah, you can have a taste of candy, but no more. Go away now, it's Christmas. That's how I feel basically. So anyway, I'll endeavor to try and do some journaling and work on that self-awareness. And I think not being attached to the outcome will pivot perfectly into what I need to talk about with regards to some admin for going into the mastermind for next year, basically. So yeah, I think just for timing, because I'm very conscious of time, and you're very welcome to hang on, Faisal. But I just wanted to say thanks, and I need to pivot just a bit of admin in terms of literally I need people's time for like 2-3 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. But yeah, I'm just conscious we're well over time here. So
no, that's all right. I've got a 12 o'clock, so I better go and prepare for that. But, I'm just glad that to have been here. I would like to hear more of your guys' stories, because all of your achievements and all of your goals they allow me to just, I guess, secretly, I like to be of use to people, but I also like to see how people succeed. And you all have such a variety of approaches. I'm just hungry to know each of you better. I don't know if that can happen, but I'm just at peace with knowing that I won't. But in any case, I'm glad to have met you. So thanks very much, and I'll see you again. Goodbye.
Thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it. Okay, team, and then just from my side, just a little bit of admin, which I think is important. So we've had quite a bit of drama at a Wealth Migrate level over the last month, and I don't know all the solutions, and funny enough, apparently I'm not supposed to be attached to the outcome. But just to let you know that what we're doing at the Mastermind and the investment platform are two separate things. I am concerned in terms of where things are at in terms of the current platform and finding a solution with the current shareholders. We had a shareholder meeting last night. There's a couple of options being put on the table. And again, I'm trying to influence them, but maybe I should become unattached to the outcome. There's nothing much to tell yet in terms of knowing exactly where it's going. But my one commitment to you is that with regards to the Mastermind, is that whatever happens, I will make sure that we've got a solution for next year in terms of what we're doing. So I can't guarantee and know what it all is now, but I just want to let you know that there has been quite a lot of drama in the month of November. There's a lot of stuff going on with the shareholders around where to from here. And I personally believe we need to keep it simple and stay on the path. But we've got 300 shareholders, and sometimes it's like herding cats in terms of that process, you know. So yeah, I'll keep you updated in terms of that process, but I wanted you to hear it from me, not the other way around, in terms of, you know, how we go about that. And if you've got any questions, you know, let me know with regards to that. I am going to be trying to meet up with Garth Wellman next week as well, because, you know, it's very important for me that we keep that process going in terms of the big picture and working together in terms of that overall partnership. I don't have all the answers, so I can't sit here and give you the answers because it's an ever-evolving space that I'm trying to figure out as we speak, basically. But I just want to let you know that I'm trying to work on it with others. And then more importantly, that the mastermind and the platform are two separate things anyway. So, you know, but when I know, I'll let you know, if that makes sense. Is that fair? Yeah. And then just in terms of planning for next year, I've been completely distracted over the last month trying to deal with all this, and I don't know how to use it any other way. And funny enough, you've all seen me do it in my coaching slides. Let me show you something here quickly. The irony is that this is where the board and the shareholders are right now. It's all about problem and drama. And what I'm trying to do is do the exact same thing that we're trying to do, which is focus on the outcome. But this has taken a huge amount of time, and it's still not anywhere close to being done. But just in terms of planning, my commitment for the year is to make sure that the Google Sheet is built for next year, and we got all the slots in from January through to December, so that there's no surprises, you know, in terms of that process. I will get it done before I, you know, take a break for Christmas, but I actually wanted to have it done already. I just haven't had a chance. I've been dealing with bloody mortars coming in left, right, and center in terms of trying to sort that out. So, but that's my commitment to it. And I do hope, and again, if anyone wants to chat to me one-to-one about what I just said, I'm quite happy to do that. But I do hope that my intention was to try and finish the year strong with Faisal. And for me, I don't know where to from here with Faisal. I have a sense or an intuition that there's a lot more that we can do with him in some sort of collaboration, but I don't really know yet. I will follow up with him and chat to him afterwards. I mean, he's given us this time as a favor, basically, to me. And I hope that you all got a lot of value from it. And I hope that we can use it to go into next year with a different energy to ultimately help you achieve your outcomes. But then maybe we all got to be unattached to outcomes. So now I'm confused. So I don't know, any closing thoughts, comments? Otherwise we'll wrap it up. We're way over time, but yeah.
So Scott, as a farmer, you know, and a crop farmer particularly, you can do whatever you like. The outcome is predetermined by something else, by someone else. It's not, it's nothing. So by nature, we are detached from the outcome going into it. Going into putting, you know, millions into the ground, covering it up, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So that's something that's second nature to me as a farmer. But you know, it's difficult. I must be quite honest with you. What you've just shared with us now rings alarm bells and creates concern. And I'd like to unpack it. You know, I think being as transparent as what you possibly can with us as a mastermind group is going to be important going forward, so that we all know exactly what we can do or how we should approach it. Thanks a lot, Scott.
No, my commitment, Derek, is to do that. You know, and I'll let you know when I know, like, if that makes sense. So definitely, completely. Cool. Okay, everyone. Any other comments or thoughts, or should we
have a Merry Christmas?
2022. What year are we at? 2022. Jeez, I just lost all year.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah,
awesome.
Blessings, happiness.
Okay, everyone. Have an incredible Christmas, everyone. And
wait. Just hang in there and have a good break if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Kerry, I appreciate that. And I intend to. And yeah, there's a lot of what are the 3 things I got to do? Self-awareness, give more of myself, and not be attached to the outcome. You know,
You've
at the end of
given
the
a
day,
lot of yourself.
what's meant to be will be, you know.
Yeah, but you've already given a lot of yourself.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, I want to thank all of you, because this is, like I said already, been a big blessing in my 2022 year. And thank you to Shane and Gina, who've been a big part in making that a reality as well. So awesome. Cheers, everyone. Have a good one. Bye then.
Cheers.